Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the TRVL Travel Photography Podcast. I am your host, Greg Snell, and this is our 12th episode, pardon me, already losing count. Today we've got a special guest, Stephen Lioy, who's joining us all the way from Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan. Stephen, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. So maybe tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll dig into the pod.
Yeah, good afternoon, man. It's early afternoon here in Bishkek. Well, as you said, my name is Stephen Lioy. I am an American, but have been based in Kyrgyzstan for a little bit over a decade now, actually, living here. And it was a little bit longer than that since my first trip here. I work as a photographer, as a writer, occasionally as a tour leader, pretty much anything to do with tourism, I'm happy to do as long as it is in an interesting place and doing some kind of interesting work. And so, especially right now, it's like the beautiful early fall in Kyrgyzstan. The leaves are starting to change. So we've been out taking pictures and doing some small hiking and really just trying to enjoy being here for this one of the best times of year.
Yes, and you are married to a Kyrgyz woman, correct?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. And for those listening, Stephen and I actually met a long time ago, 2016, so almost a decade ago in Berlin, of all places. So we've known each other for quite a while, and we met up in Kyrgyzstan as well a year later in 2017. So at that time in 2017, were you also living in Kyrgyzstan?
Yeah, I was based here already then. As I recall, we met because USAID was doing some blogger trips, right? Some media trips.
That's right.
And if I recall, that year it was at ITB, and we had brought a whole yurt over to ITB and set up a yurt inside the ITB hall, and it made this beautiful little meeting room. But yeah, I was already based here. I had been here at that point for probably 4 or 5 years, and had been working on doing some tours and promotion with USAID for probably a year or two at that point.
Yeah, very interesting. So this goes back quite a while. So you guys, Stephen is a photographer, a writer, a tour leader, as he said, and just got a really interesting and incredible story. So I wanted to bring him on the podcast to dig a little deeper, because I don't know much about like your upbringing, your childhood. You said you're American, obviously you're an expat now. So let's go like way back. So where are you from in the US? What state? Like, tell me a little bit about you growing up.
I was born in Louisiana and culturally really identify with Louisiana, but unfortunately it's the very boring northwestern part of Louisiana that actually culturally is a lot similar to East Texas. But when I introduce myself from Louisiana outside of the country, I don't really let on to that most of the time, because the south of Louisiana obviously is much more interesting. A town called Shreveport, Bossier City, actually across the river from Shreveport in Louisiana. It is about 30 minutes from the Texas border. I guess it's 40 or 45 minutes drive from the Arkansas border, just way up in the corner up there.
Man, you don't have a Southern accent though. Why is that?
I lived there for a very long time, man.
Yeah. Could you do it though? Could you give me like a Matthew McConaughey if you wanted
Not
to?
on camera, dude. No.
All right. So you're from Louisiana. No shit. Wow. All right. Yeah. You went to elementary school there, I guess high school. Did you have like a classic American high school kind of experience with like, football and cheerleaders and stuff?
Well, for me, it was soccer and Boy Scouts were the two big things at that point in my life. And then stayed in that same city after high school to go to university, because as a local student, got a pretty good scholarship, graduated debt-free from university, and then had the really flexibility then to decide what I wanted to do, because I wasn't stuck in this big debt trap that most American students unfortunately are. So after that, graduated, moved to China for what was supposed to be just 1 year of my life before I went back to go to law school. And as you can imagine, the law school thing never totally panned out, and here we are today.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. So you go to community college, I guess is what it is in the US, but it's still university.
No, it's a 4-year college. Yeah.
But is college and university the same thing? Like, what's your degree?
I have a bachelor's degree. There is a difference, but it's not meaningful in this context.
Okay, so you have a bachelor degree. What did you study?
Political science and philosophy. Again, really wanted to go to law school. I guess Canada's the same, yeah, that you go to 4 years of undergraduate first and get a bachelor's, and then after that you do law school separately.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Okay, so you have a political science and philosophy. That's actually a very good base for travel. Very much so. Okay, what year is this? Like, bring me back. Like, when did you graduate university?
High school was in '04, uni was in '08.
Oh, eight. Okay. 2008, you graduate, you go to China for a year. So this is right around the time that social media is becoming a thing. Facebook is now up, YouTube is up, but very like infant stages. China must have been quite the adventure then. Were you teaching English? What's the story there?
Of course, what does a somebody without any real qualifications do in China at that point? Yeah, I moved. It was actually social media wise was at the period where Facebook was still available in China, which now obviously seems like a very long time ago. But we moved there right around the end of the Olympics when they were in Beijing, obviously. I wasn't in Beijing. I was in a city called Shenzhen, which is kind of in the south on the border with Hong Kong. I often thought that touristically it was not a very interesting place, but as a place to live and be based, it was a wonderful base. You have Hong Kong right there, you have Guangzhou right there, you have all of the south available to you. And especially at the time, man, that was sort of the rise of the Air Asia days. So you could get from Shenzhen to Kuala Lumpur like this and be anywhere else in Southeast Asia that you wanted to be within a day. So it was a great time to be living there as a traveler. I did not really, I didn't focus on teaching. I don't have a degree as a teacher. It was just a vehicle for me to get abroad for a year for what I thought would be a 1 year gap year and then go back to the States.
Yeah, I mean, most people that I've met in the travel industry that have done a TEFL, teach
Yeah.
English as a foreign language, has been a similar story where it's just a vehicle to be able to travel and make money and base yourself in a local community because a lot of the times they're not in big cities. They put you out in rural kind of environments. It's a very good cultural exchange. So okay, that's cool. Did you travel much as a kid? I mean, where did this come from? Like this desire to go to China?
Oh man, no, we traveled a little bit in the States as a kid. I had been once to Canada as like an 8 year old because I had some family that moved up there, so we went to see them. But my only real international experience was in uni. My university, my college had a program where you had to have some sort of like intercultural experience before you graduated. It was one of the degree requirements. And so I went with school to Paris for 2 weeks, and it was the year of the World Cup in Germany. So then some friends came over, met me in, I believe it was Amsterdam. We rented a car and drove all through the Netherlands and France, a little bit of Germany, went to Nuremberg to see the US get absolutely destroyed by Ghana in the World Cup game, and then flew back to the States from there. So that was the only real major travel experience that I had. But I very distinctly, even at the time, I remember I come from not really a traveling family, And so my family kept telling me that whole time, like, oh, you have to really enjoy this experience. It's a once in a lifetime experience, blah, blah, blah. And I just thought to myself, there's no way that this will be a once in a lifetime experience. I just cannot allow that to be the case. And so that was a big part of the motivation for moving outside of the States for that gap year is that I thought, well, I'm going to be a lawyer, like it's great money, but it's a lot of work. You have very little free time. So I should grab this opportunity while I have it available and like take the year to just go travel. And then 1 year became, was supposed to be 2 years. And then I cut it into a year and a half. And at the end of a year and a half in China, maybe not to my credit, but the company that I was working for in China, they would reimburse your flights half when you went in the beginning of the semester and then half when you came back from winter break for the second semester. So I walked into the office, took the money for the flight, said, okay, I'm sorry to tell you this, James, but I'm leaving. And then I walked out the door and went to Indonesia.
Okay. Okay. So you got the travel bug on that Euro trip. And and then after the Euro trip, you finish the degree uh and then head off to China. A year and a half, that's a long time. I mean, what are you like 22 at this time?
I was 21 when I moved over, actually.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a very good eye-opening cultural experience. Did you learn any Mandarin? You must have.
Man, I did. It's gotten really bad. Until basically COVID would get back to China every year at least once. COVID obviously shut down borders for a while, and China was one of the later ones to reopen. And I've been back once since then for like, I guess it was 5 or 6 days in Beijing, and that's it.
Wait,
So I felt like I had a decent base level for travel, at least not like conversationally. But when I was in Beijing this year, dude, it was tough.
yeah, but still, that's a lot of experience in China. Like we're talking 2009, did you say? 2008, 2009, up until 2020. That's a decade. Wow. Okay, that could be a whole separate podcast. Maybe we'll come back to that another time. Tell me about photography. How did you get into to taking photos? Because I mean, you work as a travel photographer, as an author. I mean, you've had a ton of jobs to kind of keep up the travel lifestyle. But how did photography fall into your lap? Like, where did you start taking pictures?
Well, a little bit as we talked about off camera before we started, but I had a very similar experience to you that I left that job in China. I was traveling in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia at the time, dude, it was so cheap. I don't know what it's like today to backpack, but those days, like 20, $30, you were set for the day, man. And there were so many just terrible little travel company websites that would pay you like 20, 30, $40 a pop to crank out 600 words, 500 words, slap a photo on there, you're done, you know? Uh, and so in the beginning, I just was looking for a way I had saved up some money in China, but it wasn't going to last forever, you know? So I was looking for a way to be like a little bit productive on the road, pay for that day's expenses and maybe the next day and just keep going like that. So that was the very beginning. And photography, especially, like any skill, if you repeat it often enough and you really apply yourself to trying to get better, you get better at it, right? And so, like, while I was living in China, would come back from these amazing trips through Southeast Asia with just these really terrible pictures, you know? And I just couldn't understand how I could be in such amazing places taking such awful photos. And so I took an online course in the beginning of after I left China while I was traveling and really just started applying those lessons day to day and seeing like instant feedback, you know, because I do a lesson in the evening, get up the next day and try to apply that information. And then that same evening, I'm reviewing the photos and editing the photos and so on. And so it just turned out to be a lot of practice over a pretty extended period and slowly felt like I was getting better and better. At the same time, publishing these terrible things that finally you published enough kind of like just cheap whatever websites that now you have a baseline portfolio that you can look to some bigger publishers and be like, hey, look, I write a lot, I take photos a lot, let me do these things for you. And so it progressed from there. So I would call the first really big break that I had in terms of both writing and photography, Lonely Planet. Did some publications for them on their website and then picked up, actually my first job for them was the Sichuan chapter of the China book, which again, dude, China's a big place to jump into something like that. And it's a pretty intensive place. Like that's not a small state, you know, that's not a small region of the country. And so I really was in over my head a little bit and had already been to Central Asia at that point and left to go back and do that. But it just transformed into being something that was both a passion and something that I was making decent money at and able to fund travels.
Okay. So we jump right into Lonely Planet. I mean, that is the title of this podcast. So Lonely Planet for travel writers is like the holy grail for those of you listening. Like, so Steve and I were sort of brainstorming what we're going to talk about in this podcast. And one of the things we touched on was like the beginning of travel blogging and going back to like 2005, 2006, 2007. And actually Brennan knows a lot about this as well as a travel blogger and that kind of world where you're writing to try and sell to publishers, you know, online or print, and then you get paid for that, and you can do that from anywhere in the world, and then adding photos on top of that. So I want to know how you got the job with Lonely Planet, but let me go back to the photography for just a second. So you had a camera at the time. What were you using? Was it a point and shoot, or did you have a DSLR? Do you remember what your first camera was?
Offhand, I think it was a Canon Super Zoom. You know what I'm talking about? One of the ones that it's not an interchangeable lens, but it does have a decent zoom attached to it.
You turn it on and the zoom pops out.
Exactly.
Like a power shot or something like this.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So that was one of your first cameras. Where did you buy it? Did you buy it in the US?
It must have been in the States before I moved to China. Yeah. I don't remember offhand doing that, but that's logically it should be.
So that's what you were using when you were first sort of adding your pictures to the blogs.
Yep.
So would you at that time consider yourself a writer and not so much a photographer, but you knew that photography was important, so you started learning about it?
I would consider myself a traveler at that point more than either a writer or a photographer. You know, The goal was not art for art's sake. The goal was just to make some cash to keep going.
Yeah, to keep going. Sure. Yeah. So how does Lonely Planet come into this then? Because you know Becky Enright. You know she's a Lonely Planet author now. I remember talking to her for years, and she was saying like, "Oh man, I would love to write for Lonely Planet. Like that's going to be the ultimate goal." You know, and then she got it. And I remember sending her a message, being like, "This is incredible. Good for you. Congratulations." So for you, it sounds like you just kind of landed right onto Lonely Planet. You say it's a big break. I get that. But yeah, digging into a China chapter as an American, back then, how did that happen?
Well, step back a minute. I had a similar experience as Becky, where there was a friend of mine that I worked with in China, Gwen. And as I was leaving that job to start traveling, she asked me, like, but what do you see yourself doing in like 5 years from now? And I think I just sort of offhandedly said, oh, like would love to write for Lonely Planet or something like that, right? So very much similar idea. So after China, took off on the road, was more or less traveling for about 2 full years, just constantly traveling, no home base, no anything. Uh, Towards the end of that, had been to Mongolia, which I know you love, had been to East Asia, had been to Southeast Asia, had been to Nepal. Um, and so at some point, I was back in China looking at the map, and I was like, well, the only place that I haven't gone from China to their neighbors is in Central Asia, right? All of these, the Stan countries, whatever they're like. And so I was in Urumqi, I think, or Kashgar, one of the two, sort of as a lot of stuff was kicking off that's still going on that I don't know how deeply you want to get into. And then as I was looking at the map, I was just like, well, look, Kazakhstan's right there. They've got an embassy right in Urumqi. I can pick up a visa and be there in like 4 days. So I did that. That was the start of traveling in Central Asia. Finally, after I'd been based in Central Asia a little bit, which we can explore more if you want to, I happened to be on Twitter and somebody was tweeting about Kyrgyzstan, where I was already based at the time. And I just kind of offhanded replied to the tweet about something. I don't even remember what I said, to be totally honest. But then I looked at the profile later, and it was like Lonely Planet's destination editor for Central Asia, Megan, who remains a good friend. And I thought, oh, maybe I should send her a pitch of some sort, you know? So I think I pitched a couple of online articles or something. After that, she invited me. There's a test. I don't know if it's still the same, but at the time there was a test you had to take where you did like a sample chapter for Lonely Planet for a guidebook, and they evaluated that. And if it was good enough, you could start like pitching for guidebook chapters too. And so she was also the China editor, and so like she had me take the test. I did the test in Jordan of all places, actually, because I was there traveling at the time. Passed it, and then as sometime in a couple of months after that, the China book was up for renewal, and we talked about it. And I said, look, Sichuan's the best part of the country. If I'm going to spend anywhere a couple of months, that's where I want to spend it. And got that job.
Wow. Wow. What a story. So what year? What year was that?
Excellent question. Must be 2014 or 2013.
And that's how that began. Okay. So let's say it's 2013. That sounds about right. So your first chapter with Lonely Planet as an author, run me through that. What does that look like? I've never talked to a Lonely Planet author in depth. So, tell me everything you can tell me about that. You said months. Did they hire you for months? Did they pay for your flights? Did you have a day rate? Did you get like a block amount for the chapter?
Set rate contract. I'd have to read it to tell you how much I really should be talking about that. So let's maybe push past that a little bit.
This is years ago, dude. You can tell me.
Well, but I still am working with them. Yeah.
Oh yeah, true. Okay.
And so, yeah, I guess I was there about 2 months because Sichuan is massive. And of course, China, like there's public transportation, but sometimes it's one bus a day to go to some remote Tibetan village somewhere, so it takes real time. And so, like, it's just what you would expect. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff. You do a lot of amazing hikes. You get a lot of really good food, some bad food too, to check places that need to be discarded. And then there's a lot of terribly boring stuff. Like you go to the bus station and you ask for the bus schedule and you translate every entry on the bus schedule so that you can translate the information that's necessary into print information. The thing that I dislike the most, frankly, is checking out accommodations, because like you have some really cool accommodations sometimes, but for the most part in most cities, you have just bog standard things that are the only thing that differentiates them is the location or the price. And when the price is the same and the location is the same and you have like 14 different options, you have to choose one or two of these to recommend, And like, that's the part that I really find the most challenging, is looking at all these places and then sitting down at the end of the day to like, how do I choose one of these things of 14 identical hotels, And to this day, that is the part that I enjoy the least of doing guidebook work.
Yeah. Has any hotel ever tried to pay you to get preferential position?
Well, in Kyrgyzstan, several people have implied that they would be willing to. I don't do it. Lonely Planet, obviously, you can't take any freebies. The rule is a cup of tea is the most important thing. Sometimes I'll take a cup of coffee, whatever. But no, dude, when I am here in Kyrgyzstan, where people in tourism know me a little bit because I've been based here so long, it's kind of hard to avoid. But outside of Kyrgyzstan, I never walk in with a Lonely Planet hat on or something, totally anonymous. Like, I want the average, absolute average tourist experience when they walk in. Most places, I'll try to start the conversation in English just to see what that happens like, what happens when you do that. And if that's problematic, then I'll switch to whatever the local language is as well and have the conversation in that.
Amazing.
But no, I don't want to be anybody to know that I'm there doing a guidebook chapter. As far as a service provider should be concerned, I'm just an average tourist off the street.
Yeah, totally. No, I completely agree. So was the money good? You don't have to tell me exactly,
Yeah,
but
I'm pretty comfortable with it for most of the contracts that I've had. Yeah.
okay, so you're still a Lonely Planet author. Is that correct?
Man, I submitted a chapter for Armenia, I guess it was about a month ago, and I'm waiting on the editorial review sometime in the next 2 weeks.
Wow. Okay, so you've been an author with Lonely Planet for over a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck, that's awesome. Okay,
Great.
I've got that opened a whole new can of questions.
It's okay.
All right. So, yeah, you say the money's good. You get paid in US dollars. They are a US company or Australian?
Good question. They are now with offices in the UK and in the US. As far as I understand, the Australian office has closed. There was a big shakeup during COVID, and there was a big shakeup by the current owner at the time, and then now it's been bought by another owner, which is a US company. So I assume that their primary office is the US one now. But because I'm a US citizen, I just do all of my banking, all of my stuff with them through the US office.
Right. So you have a US bank account, or do you get paid to like Wise or something? Yeah, no,
I have a business. If you want to get into tax
I
stuff,
do.
like,
Yeah, yeah,
I keep
yeah.
a business in the US registered under my name. And so all of the payments that I receive for freelance work are sent to that business. We'll discuss that later, I guess. And so I just have them pay me to that because it's easier.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So Lonely Planet hires you to work in China, an editor named Megan, and you say you're still friends with her today. Is she still working with Lonely Planet as well?
She is not, man. She's gotten real deep into dark sky tourism. And as far as I can see, it is like a leading writer for dark sky tourism, doing some really interesting stuff. She's been here one time to Kyrgyzstan, and we went to Kelsu. I don't remember if I've told you about before, like a very remote mountain lake. And we went sort of right at the end of the season. So there were no tourists there. There was like, at the time back in the day, there were maybe 3 yurt camps out there.
Mm.
And so like you walk outside the yurts at night and literally the sky has exploded above you.
Stars.
Not literally, obviously. But I mean, just it's unbelievably beautiful.
Yeah. Kyrgyzstan is an amazing country. I
Well,
mean,
for nighttime especially.
yeah. All right. So let's go into Central Asia then. So you start your Lonely Planet journey with China. What was the second chapter that you wrote? Or sorry, actually, before we do that, like, what was the feedback like from you and from Lonely Planet with the final result on that China chapter?
China, so Lonely Planet, different books for different regions are written either in American English or in British English. I guess there's others, but those are the two that I've worked with. And China was supposed to be a British English chapter, and I just missed that note. So I wrote it all in very American English with American spelling and American phrasing. And so the main feedback that I remember from Megan was, this is pretty good, but you didn't do anything in British English, and we had to fix all of it. So please do better about that next time. So that was the main takeaway that I had from that,
Okay.
in terms of their feedback.
But you were really happy with the contract, with the experience, with the money, and you were like, okay, this was cool. I want to do this again.
Yeah.
So what was the next chapter? Where did you pitch for Central Asia, or like what was the next contract?
If Central Asia was next, she would have approached me.
And are you always freelance? Like they didn't hire you, no?
No, it's all freelance.
It's
Yeah.
all freelance. Okay.
Everything I do is freelance.
Okay. Okay.
Dude, looking at the list of places that I've been with them, I think either Kyrgyzstan or Eritrea would be the next one.
Eritrea is in Africa. Yeah. West Africa.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly the timing.
East Africa. It's a really tiny little country, right?
It's a tiny little country. It's a beautiful little country. Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't remember offhand which one of those would have been next. Kyrgyzstan was 2016. So I guess that would have been the next one. Was the
Pretty
Central-
close. All right. Well, let's focus on Central Asia because you're obviously living in Bishkek. You're married to a Kyrgyz woman. You've been there for a decade, and I consider you a Central Asia expert. So, how many chapters for Lonely Planet have you written about Central Asia?
Only Kyrgyzstan twice, actually, but that's because so we updated that one. I think it's 2016. I could check the book and tell you, I guess.
I'm surprised though, because you've been to every country in the stands.
But not all of them for Lonely Planet, right?
Okay, interesting. Yeah. All right.
That one was due for an update in early 2020. Obviously, that was canceled. And I think because of the fact that the company was sold and changed hands and repurposed, reformatted, whatever, it just never got around to it until this past summer. So we just finished the update I submitted everything in like January or February this year, and the book should come out on November 18th of this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Is is AI going to change the way that you write chapters?
No, I've deliberately, well, for me personally, I don't think so. For other writers, I can't answer. Um, I've used AI, interesting. I just had this discussion recently with a friend, but I have used AI occasionally to like help start planning itineraries for places that I'm going for personal travels. And I find that there are often huge inconsistencies, both in terms of like things don't exist that AI is telling me, or like even travel time between places is wildly different than what it actually should be. And so I haven't tried it as a guidebook writer. I enjoy the process of guidebook writing as well. But I imagine that if you were to try to use AI to write a guidebook chapter like that, you would spend just as much time verifying and editing information as it would take you to just go do the thing in the first place.
And type it out. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
And like I find editing other people's work to be much more painstaking than just writing something myself personally. And so I would rather just go do the work honestly and write it myself and know that everything is correct in there and is verified according to my notes, you know?
So, what was the first Lonely Planet for Central Asia?
Well, I don't know, man. Actually, that's a great question. I believe the one we just finished was the fourth edition. Let me see if I have that document still saved.
And how many countries are included in it?
Yeah, so it's 5 countries. It is Kyrgyzstan. No, I don't have the edition noted. It is Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan.
Okay. What are we missing? Kazakhstan. I guess that's too big.
What do you mean? What are we missing?
Well, you said Kyrgyzstan,
Yeah,
Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and
Kazakhstan.
okay. All right.
So it's all
So those are the five sort of Central Asia. You don't consider Mongolia or even Russia?
yeah. Well, so Russia is a totally different book. I don't think it's been updated in a while, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Mongolia is a separate book.
Okay.
Afghanistan or Pakistan, people sometimes when they like casually are discussing Central Asia, will include these two. Culturally, it's quite different. Like the 5 countries that I just named are united by their shared Soviet experience. So travel in these 5 countries is much more similar to one another than it is in somewhere like Afghanistan or Pakistan.
Yeah, I totally
Uh,
agree. That makes
I mean,
sense.
you can make an argument that it's similar to Russia too, but like then culturally, it's very different. So Tajikistan is a little bit different, is more similar to like Persian culture. It's a sort of aside from the other 4. The other 4 are what are called Turkic countries. So it's not Turkey, right? It's Turkic, which means they have like a background of shared origin with Turkish people and Turkmen people and Kyrgyz and Kazakh and Uzbek.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
languages are all very similar. The cultures have some commonalities. So those 4, and of course Tajikistan as well, all really have like a united sort of travel perspective from a foreign traveler's perspective that makes them, I think, logical to include in one book in one product together.
yeah, I agree. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I'm so interested as well because of that shared cultural experience. The landscapes are absolutely phenomenal. The mountain regions, the lakes, the whole wildlife. Even there's snow leopard in many of these countries. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. So, okay, so you get to Kazakhstan from China, then how do you decide to go down into Kyrgyzstan?
Well, I
And
didn't. In fact, I got to Kazakhstan from China. It
Mhm.
was getting into fall, so it started getting cold and it snowed there. So I got an Uzbek visa and I went to Uzbekistan and it started getting cold and it was going to snow there. So I flew to Sri Lanka. That was my reason.
Okay.
Because it was warm, you know. But it had like that was enough, and I only was in Kazakhstan, basically in the very south along the border, like Almaty and the mountains around there, down to Shymkent and then across to Uzbekistan. But it just was enough that I was hooked, man. Like it was so different from anywhere I had ever been. I didn't speak any Russian, so I was just backdropped in like a foreign language environment where at the time very few people spoke English. And so it was just such an interesting and different travel experience. And so I thought, well, okay, I have to go back and see the other countries.
And
So
what year was this? Were it like 2015, maybe?
no, no, long before that must be 2010.
Okay. All right. So this is before Lonely Planet came
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Right. Okay. So
Before I
what?
left.
Yeah. Tell me how you landed in Bishkek then. Like, how did that become your base?
Well, so if I left China in, oh, no, I'm sorry. So 2008, I graduated uni. So I left 2010 left China. So this should be around 2011 or something. But man, I was hooked after that first trip. I flew to Sri Lanka, ended up back in the States for a minute, and then started thinking about what I was going to do forward. And I just really wanted to come spend more time in Central Asia and see the other countries. So to this day, for Turkmenistan, you can go, but you can't go independently. You can't just be an independent tourist in Turkmenistan. You either need to have a guided tour, or until COVID anyway, not much now, you could get a transit visa and spend like 3 days running across the country to go from like Kazakhstan to Iran or whatever. So I decided that I was going to spring for it, pay for a tour in Turkmenistan, did like a, I guess, 5-day tour in Turkmenistan the first time or something. From there to Uzbekistan, again, to Tajikistan for the first time, and then up through there to Kyrgyzstan for the first time.
Along the Pamir Highway.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
That's where we're going for the Tajik trip.
To be there, man. It's a great place.
Yeah, I can't wait. But okay, so Kyrgyzstan, funny enough, out of the 5 was the last one that you visited.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So yeah, at that time, did you land in Bishkek and you were like, okay, I'm going to take a bit of a break and just like, get on Twitter and start writing for Lonely Planet?
No. Well, two things. Like, so that second trip, you had to have visas for every country still, paper visas in your passport that you got from an embassy. So I had gone to Austria, to Vienna, to set up all the visas. Did that, finished in Kyrgyzstan, was just like hooked at that point, dude. And so I got to Kyrgyzstan, must have been June. And already while I was in either Uzbekistan or Tajik, I don't remember, was writing to a language school in Kyrgyzstan being like, hey, can you hook me up with some Russian lessons? Because I spoke all of 20 or 30 words of Russian at that point. And really wanted to learn more Russian to spend more time traveling in Central Asia. Because obviously, because of the post-Soviet situation, Russia is kind of lingua franca for the whole region. And so already before I even got to Kyrgyzstan, was writing to language schools in Bishkek asking about doing lessons. Left for a minute, came back in August, was going to stay for 2 weeks at that point to study Russian, 2 months. I was going to stay for 2 months in the beginning to study Russian, and then plan to really leave and keep traveling and just keep dipping in and out. But at the time, dude, like it had been at that point about 2 years since I had left China. And I just was so tired of moving around constantly with no base. It just got to the point that I was just like, I wanted somewhere to stay and be based. And even if I was still going on trips, having somewhere interesting to come back to that I wanted to be. And Bishkek, just at the time, like I can't say it's a beautiful city. It's a really nice city to live in most of the year. Mountains are like a 30 to 40 minute drive that way. And crucially for me at the time, Kyrgyzstan was the first of the 5 countries to become visa-free for American passports.
Yeah, there you go.
So
that's really important.
Instead of having to go get a visa at embassy, you could come, you could stay. I think at the time it was like 90 days you could stay. I really don't remember offhand. And
Most
so
likely.
it became really easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I mean, you're jumping all over the place. It's hard for me to keep track. All right, let's go back to travel photography. So
Sure.
you've got a camera. When did you upgrade from like a point and shoot to a DSLR? What was your first DSLR?
First one was the 6D, I believe.
From Canon.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah. I had a Rebel before that, but
T3i, 2Ti.
Yeah, T3i, I think. Went to the Rebel, and then that was while I was traveling. That was sometime during that period where I was traveling after China. And then I believe shortly after I got here, and I think it was probably around the same time I started with Lonely Planet, honestly, because I remember by the first Nomad Games, which was in 2014, I already had a DSLR, and that would have been the 6D Mark I. And then now I've worked with for probably 5 years now. I don't remember exactly, with the 62.
So you're still Canon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Rebel was also DSLR, but crop sensor, and then the 6D would have been your first full frame.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, because Lonely Planet was buying your pictures too, or only the writing?
No, but I was really thinking more at that point long term about like, there was a minute, man, where even while I was traveling, I had deferred law school. I was going to go back after a year and still go to law school, whatever. And by the time that I was working for Lonely Planet, I was also really looking at the tourism sector and trying to understand what my future was going to be professionally, right? Lonely Planet was one part of that, but again, it's all freelance.
Yeah, because I met you through USAID, like the Agency for International Development.
Yeah.
which is another fucking topic given what's been happening in the last couple of years. But
Yeah.
okay, so yeah, you're like, hustling, trying to keep up the income stream so you can keep traveling and living abroad. And photography kind of just naturally became a part of that.
I consider myself a serviceable writer and a decent photographer, right? Photography for me is much more a passion and a hobby that also makes me some money. Writing, I like, if I'm in the mood, I really like writing, you know? But there are days where you need to sit down and write some stuff and you have to make it sound good and you have to do a good job. But like, that's work for me. Photography at its peak is just fun and art and something I really enjoy doing. And so, of course, I ended up leaning more into the photography where I could so that I could continue doing the thing that I enjoyed a lot more and obviously start getting paid for it more.
Yeah. So you're in Bishkek, you kind of fall in love with the city. We meet in Berlin in 2016. So tell me how you kind of got involved with USAID.
As a blogger, actually, to start with, that same project that we met because of, I guess 2 years before that,
What was that project?
the USAID Business Growth Initiative, which
In
is
in
still
Central Asia or in
no, that one
Kyrgyzstan?
worked only in Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah, tell me about it. How did you get involved?
They worked in several thematic areas. One was in the fashion industry. One was something to do, man, with developing the aviation sector. I never had any hand in that. I don't remember really. And then the one that I worked with was tourism. And so the concept was just to push tourism as a way to further develop local economies out in the regions of Kyrgyzstan, right? And the regions of Central Asia for other projects as well. But their big thing is they helped open basically a couple of DMOs. Offhand, I think it was probably 4 or 5 across the
DMO
country.
is Destination Marketing Organization.
Management organization, but yeah,
Close.
marketing being one of the key elements of that. And so there was one in particular. Did you go to a city called a village called Jurgalan?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
awesome.
So, dude, like, I don't know how much you know about that place, but so there's one guy there, Emil, and his wife,
Yeah.
Gomira, I
Yeah,
believe
I
is her
worked
name.
with them. Yeah, we
Yeah.
met. We met. Nice
So,
guy.
like, they proposed this DMO until USAID and they started working together. That place was like, it was a Soviet coal mining village. The mines still operate, but nobody really wants to work there. So all the young people were leaving and going to Karakol or going to Bishkek, and the village was just like not economically sound, you know? And the two of them in USAID, man, have changed that village completely. There's like, I guess offhand, there must be 10 or 12 guest houses there now. It's a huge ski destination. It's a huge hiking and horse riding destination. Like, I mean, genuinely put that place on the map in terms of tourism. So the first time that it had anything to do with USAID, they had a sort of like a Jurgalan festival is what they called it at the time. And it was like, it was a fun, cute little thing, but it wasn't much. There were no tourists there. But I was already based here, and a friend of mine from the job that I had at the time at a university in Bishkek had somehow connections to one of the girls that worked on the project. She's in Berlin now, actually. Uh, and so they just invited me along as a blogger, basically, to go take some pictures and write about it so that they had something that they could show that they had published about it, whatever. But that must have been 2015, because the year before that had been the first World Nomad Games, which is a big event that's held in Kyrgyzstan for a couple of years. Then it went to Turkey, then to Kazakhstan, and then of course next year it's back in Kyrgyzstan. And I had been at the first one, and it was like really cool, but it was pretty rough around the edges in terms of how it was organized and how tourists could sort of interface with it. And so I rode back from Jurgalan to Bishkek, which like on a good day is a 6 to 7 hour drive. But in winter, it's usually longer. And man, this poor woman that was in charge of the project, I had to ride with her to get back in time because I had work at my office job that I had here. And I just chewed her ear off the whole time, talking about things that we could do better at the Nomad Games because it was happening again in 2016, the next year. And I frankly think I talked way too much, and she must have been sick of me. But also, they reached out to me later in the next year and were like, "Hey, look, we're planning a blogger trip for the World Nomad Games, and we want you to be in charge of it."
Perfect. Yeah. So that's how you kind of sort of stumble into the management side because yeah, I remember you were kind of like the main contact for hiring people like me to come on board to make videos, take pictures, and write articles.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and you being based in Bishkek, speaking Russian, all these things are a huge asset. So it sounds like when you kind of get an opportunity or you begin working with somebody, you kind of keep up that partnership for quite a long time. Were you still involved with USAID up until like this year?
USAID, it's been, I guess, 2 or 3 years since I've done anything with. I had been working more recently with the sort of Swish version of USAID called Helvetas.
Okay. So we're
Uh,
going, that's like 2023. So almost like 8 years that you were sort of involved with whatever they were doing in Central Asia.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that project closed. Every USAID project had sort of like a set lifespan. Usually it was 5 years, 6 years, something. So the BGI project closed. Another one opened up, and I did some work with them across Central Asia, including Tajik and Uzbek and Kazakhstan as well.
Okay.
Uh, then transitioned more to working with the Swiss version of that.
Wow. All right. So when did you meet your wife?
That was in, well, we met the first time in 2016 must be, uh, because when I was brought on to lead that blogger trip, there were two staff on the USAID side that were my primary contacts, her and one other guy, and the other guy like got whatever the green card equivalent is for Canada and left for Canada. So then it was
Oh,
just me and her doing this thing. And so we worked like extremely closely together as colleagues for, I guess, a month and a half before that trip. Had a good relationship, and then sort of shortly after that started dating.
yeah. One thing leads to another. Okay. So you met in Bishkek 2016, and she was involved also with that. Was this World Nomads, though? The part of the World Nomad Games?
Yeah, so that was for the 2016 World Nomad Games.
And that was also a USAID sponsored project? Or was that
No,
something
so
separate?
the games themselves were not,
No, of
but
course not. Yeah.
USAID, that same project wanted to help promote them to an international audience. So we did, that was the first big blogger trip that I had organized, was bringing, I guess it was due to 8 or 10 people, bringing them to the second World Nomad Games just for the Nomad Games.
Yeah. It
Like I
was,
think we brought them 3 days early to do something else in Kyrgyzstan and then collected everybody at the Nomad Games. And that was the focus of the trip.
and was Jared part of that? Jared and Alicia?
Yes,
Yeah. I think he was.
I'm
'Cause
pretty sure. Yeah, he
yeah.
has photos from the Nomad Games, so it must have been that one.
Yeah, so Jared, for you guys listening, was one of our guests on the pod like a couple months ago. He's an Australian travel photographer, absolutely, yeah, great photos. He's been all over the place, and that's one mutual connection that we have actually before we even all knew each other, which is kind of crazy. So, wow, all right, what a story, Stephen. That's amazing. And obviously, you fall in love with the region. You're still there years and years later. COVID must have really rocked you guys, as it did everybody. I mean, are you still like, would you consider yourself still working in travel, full time?
Yeah, man. Everything that I do is still connected to the tourism sector in some
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, nice. Okay. And tell me more about your photo journey. Like you say it's a hobby but you make money off of. Like you said you at the very beginning of this conversation, the fall colors are really nice right now. So are you still like having that passion to explore Kyrgyzstan and get out there and get unique photos? Tell me a little bit about the landscape and the wildlife around Kyrgyzstan.
Well, I do actually. I've realized recently that I've sort of lost that drive in Bishkek itself, in the city. And I probably should spend more time doing that, especially because the city is really in a state of change, like architecturally, as a lot of the old Soviet buildings find they're going down and being replaced with modern stuff. But in the country overall, still very much, yes. I haven't been here much this summer because I've been busy with projects elsewhere. But typically in summer, anytime that I have free time, I take my car, I drive to the mountains, I do some hiking, go to the village to restock on supplies and take a shower at a guest house one night and then go back to the mountains. Like there's just, I genuinely think even I live here the entire rest of my life and spend every summer exploring this country, I will never see every valley and every lake and every waterfall and every whatever. It's just, there's so much to explore in the country. And even dude, like I spend most of my time in the north because it's just much quicker to drive from Bishkek to the north. Like to go to the south, you have to spend basically a whole day in the car. And so there's so much around me here that like it's only 2 or 3 times that I've really done long extended journeys to the rest of the country.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's nice. That's nice that you got
I
all
like
those
it.
adventures on your doorstep. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So you're still working in tourism. You're still taking tons of photos. As a travel writer, with Lonely Planet, still doing chapters for them. What is your definition of the genre of travel photography?
Oh, I would have loved a moment to think about this before we get on the call.
Well, I could tell you, for me, it kind of encompasses wildlife and even portraiture of like cultural experiences. Food could fall under it. I mean, it does. It's sort of like an umbrella.
But
But I think for us as travelers, it's always been like a means to share our experience with the friends and family, the audience, whoever wants to look at it. You know, you're kind of capturing memories. But I'm curious to know what your definition would be, like just off the top of your head. What is travel photography to Stephen Lioy?
very rough, but something like landscapes and lifestyles that evoke some sort of curiosity about the rest of the world, right? Like, I don't go back to Texas and shoot travel photography. I take my camera with me. I take a couple of photos while I'm there, but it's like birds and stuff. You know, it's not much. Uh, and then I come here and like anytime I'm outside of the city, my camera is in the car beside me or on my hip while I'm hiking, you know, because it's just somewhere that evokes for me the sense of discovery and exploration and wonder. So somehow my definition should be rooted something in that.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, cool, man. This is already like 45 minutes long, so I'm going to try and wrap it up. Just such a crazy story. I feel like we could talk for hours, especially digging more into, you know, USAID and a few other things we talked about earlier, but I won't get into it. I think for this episode, it's just really good to learn more about you. You know, I guess you don't have any plans to go back to the US. Like, would you say you're going to be in Kyrgyzstan for quite a while?
I intend to. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have like a citizenship? I assume you have residency.
Yeah. Well, I don't even have residency yet. I've been here just now long enough this year to start applying for residency. But I have what's called a family visa because obviously I'm married. That was interesting in COVID too, but I think that's too long to fit at this point into the story.
No. I'm curious. I'm curious. I thought you had. So tell me a bit more about the residency. You can stay under the family visa for how long?
For 360 days.
Continue like on a loop.
Yeah. So I reapply every year for a new family visa. That's how it's built. Yeah. Interestingly, so my wife and I were married officially at like call it the courthouse wedding type thing on December. Ooh, I should know this date, but I don't offhand. I think it was December 9th or 10th in 2019. Our wedding was planned for March of 2020.
No.
As you can imagine, that's terrible planning for a wedding.
Ouch.
Luckily, most importantly, I guess, in between those two, we did the honeymoon. So we had already done the honeymoon before COVID kicked off, which was great. We went to Zanzibar and the Seychelles and Doha and then back home. It was a great trip. Yeah, it was cool. But then we were supposed to be doing the wedding just after ITB in March of 2020. So I boarded a flight from Bishkek to Istanbul to fly to ITB. She was going for USAID. They had booked her flight a day behind me. While I'm in the air, they cancel ITB, right? So I get to Istanbul. I had I think a one night overnight layover. So just pushed on to Germany. Why not? You know, I've already got the flight. I don't know what else to do. Get there. Eventually, just head back to Turkey for the wedding, go to Cappadocia, have some lovely photography because there's nobody traveling at the time. You know, it's a terrible time to be traveling. And finally, like they announced that it's going to be a pandemic, right? Officially. And so, of course, we canceled the wedding and we email everybody, tell them, look, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, we have to cancel it just because we don't want people to get stranded here. And I was more or less set for like hunkering down in Istanbul for a month or 2 months and just seeing what happened, you know? And then like literally I was in Taksim Square, right? There's a little Italian coffee shop. I was having a coffee. I was about to go to the Turkish Airlines office to change my booking for like 2 months from now. And I got on the Wi-Fi at the cafe and my wife was like, look, just today, they changed the rules. They've opened the Kyrgyzstan border up for people who are family members of Kyrgyz citizens or for Kyrgyz citizens.
We gotta go now.
So I had just checked into an Airbnb and walked to Taksim, ran back to the Airbnb, grabbed all my stuff. I was supposed to be a friend that was going to be at our wedding, was going to be coming later. I told her, look, the key's here. Here's the number. Call the guy, whatever. Sprinted to the airport in a taxi. Got there. It was a ghost town, dude. I've never seen it. It was the new airport in Istanbul, which now is like one of the busiest, I think, airports in the world. And it was a ghost town. It was weird, actually. Went to the Priority Pass lounge, printed off this rule in Russian, the law that had changed, because I knew it was going to be a problem. Got to the gate, and they were like, sir, you have an American passport. You cannot get on this flight. Well, I have a printed version of the new law here that says that family members of Kyrgyz citizens can enter Kyrgyzstan. Here's my mayor's license. Here's my wife's ID. Here's the law. They couldn't read Russian, so they handed it to another passenger. Like, hey, what does this say? Can you summarize this for us? It was a crazy time, everything was changing. Got on the flight, and dude, like, every person on the flight was a Kyrgyz person except for me. I had like row 26 or something, and so I had to walk past everybody. And you remember how paranoid everybody was at the time? Everybody was just staring at me like, what is this guy doing here? It was so weird. We landed, and Kyrgyzstan had initiated quarantine procedures for like people who were coming from high-risk countries. And so Turkey was not a high-risk country, but Germany was. And because my passport said I had been in Germany, I had to go to quarantine for a week. There's a U.S. military base that during the war in, I guess it was Afghanistan, was a transit point for soldiers going over. And so like it had been abandoned for 4 or 5 years at this point. They just dusted it off and opened it up as a quarantine facility. So I spent 7 days in this quarantine facility outside of Bishkek airport. It was a weird experience. I published on BBC's Russian service about it, actually, some photos. And then finally got to go home. And on the day that we were supposed to be having our wedding, I was quarantined for another 7 days in our bedroom in the apartment. So my wife and I were just like sitting on opposite sides of the bedroom door chatting to each other because we couldn't open the door and see each other.
Crazy.
It was time, man. It was time.
Wow. I mean, there's so many travelers who have like really crazy COVID stories. I almost want to just like pick some people and just ask them what happened to you in March 2020.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting one. Must have just missed each other then, because I was in Berlin for ITB as well when it got canceled. Like I was in Berlin about to go. So we must have, you did touch down in Berlin and then just turn right back around?
I must have been there for 4 or 5 days trying to figure out what I was going to do.
Yeah, I must have just missed you then. Anyway. All right. Yes. Thank you. That was a great story to end the pod. It's been a blast to get to know you a little bit more. For those of you listening who made it all the way to the end, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Stephen, and really, really interesting character and story as a travel writer for Lonely Planet, and author, a freelance writer and travel photographer, and soon to be working with us too with TRVL Photography. So that is pretty sweet, my man. It's going to be, hopefully the beginning of another long and good relationship within tourism. Mm-hmm. So, thanks for taking the time. And any last words for the people listening?
Yeah, I guess your audience is pretty adventurous, but those of your listeners who have not ever considered traveling to Central Asia, I would urge you, not even just Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, even Turkmenistan, if you don't mind the money. It's just such a fascinating region. It's like right on the cusp right now of being accessible enough to get here, but still adventurous enough that you're going to have an experience, man. And so I think it's truly, I'm biased, obviously. I think it's really one of the most interesting regions of the world.
I probably should have started with that. All right. No, that's awesome. Thanks so much, dude. And you have a great week in Bishkek. All right.
Thanks.
Peace.